This week on the Orange Box podcast, we talk about the recent Xbox and PlayStation Network outages, the 7-day boycott planned for the PlayStation Network, and more. All of this tonight, but first, on to the new Beautiful Bean intro. Welcome to the place where PC and console gaming talk combine. This is the Orange Box Podcast, episode 147. I'm your host, the man who, when you close your eyes, you can almost feel like he's not retarded at all, Nathan, also known as the Frozen Gamer 87. And joining me, as always, the man who is not buying the PR campaign when it comes to Master Chief's one-man arminess, Justin, better known as I Am Zaracon. How you doing today? How's your week been?
It's been quite a bit of a roller coaster here and there. So let me see. I guess one thing I'll start off with is sort of a conclusion to what I said last week. I even almost forgot about this until I saw an email, but eBay did get in touch with me again, so they were going to issue a refund for my order. So that's already in the process. So I'm glad that's finished.
Good.
On that end. Saturday, I was helping out with some stuff just because there had been some damage, and so I was helping someone out on that end with stuff, and it was a bit of a mess, but it wasn't necessarily as big, or it didn't take as long to get things suitable as I thought originally. And also last week, I have a phone that I use for my job, just because since I switched over to a de-googled phone, I still needed to have a phone to use an app, just because
Gotcha.
I needed my job offers or provides like subway passes, but those are digital and you need an app, so I had to use my old phone for that. But my phone suddenly, inexplicably, just the colors were completely washed out and the image was completely faded. And I was really concerned because it just happened in a split second. And then it turns out that someone someone said that the issue could be the fact that I had the blue filter turned on, or using the night mode. So because of that, they said to switch it off, and then that should fix it. So I did that, but nothing really seemed to change. And I was really concerned because I can't, scan my pass when I go use the subway if it doesn't work. But then I saw that if I adjust my brightness settings, then it'll work. It'll be better. But it still seems like the color still is a bit off. So what I did was I said, all right, I'm just gonna go look for a cheap used phone and get that and replace this one, because I don't know how long the rest of the screen is gonna be messed up. So that should be coming in later this week. Sunday, my sister and brother-in-law needed me to watch the my niece and nephew, so they came over here and they spent the night and had some fun. They made sure that I was ready to get some rest that night, but they had a good time, and I enjoyed seeing them again. And then today, you know this bit already, but we sort of had a very strong storm that passed through the area, and when I was getting ready to leave work, I was like, yeah, this is a very nasty storm, but also I got a message saying that the power was out. I was like, all right, so I'll see what it's like when I get back in, and the power was still off, so I was like, all right, I don't know what's gonna happen tonight, but thank God that the power did come on, so it was a bit later, but in time for us to get ready to do this podcast, so definitely grateful for that, and that it wasn't really long overall. But yeah, that has been my roller coaster of a week.
Well, I'm glad, obviously, that you got your power back on and all that, and that you were able to get the refund from eBay. So that's very good. The phone issue, hopefully, you can just figure out. Find something that'll work for you. But
Yeah.
I mean, I technically have an old phone that just needs a screen replaced, and it's a pretty good phone, but I was still kind of holding on to it mostly because it's like I have the replacement screen, but it requires some soldering, and I've never done any before. And so, like, at one point I was gonna have a friend replace the screen for me, but I just have never gotten around to asking him, and it's kind of hard to get a hold of him these days. So, but yeah, if you don't have any luck with that, I could easily provide you with one of my old phones. Just give it to you. Something that you could use. Ones that actually still have functional screens. They're just old. So, in fact, one of them is an old Asus phone that both of the cameras don't work on it. So it's like, hey, you don't have to worry as much about that. I mean, obviously, I'm assuming is that the one would be de-googled, or is the other one de-googled?
It's the old phone that was that had that stock Android on it. So
gotcha. Okay.
That was the issue.
Yeah.
Was just that one just wasn't working anymore.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. Well, like I said, if you can't find anything else, let me know, and I can send you one of my old ones.
Okay, thank you.
All right. As far as my week goes, I'm trying to think if there's much of anything like eventful. It was all pretty standard. I'm sure there's something I'm forgetting about, but I basically ended up just not doing much of anything over the weekend. It was nice after having a couple of busy weekends in a row. Basically just spent most of the day playing games, did some grilling, just because we were out of grilled chicken, so I brined and grilled some more chicken, and I tried out a new recipe that I've never done before. It was just something I thought of, and that's making a jambalaya pasta. So instead of doing it with rice, doing it with pasta. And the main reason why I decided to do this was because I had gotten this thing of Little Smokies, which normally is just served as like an appetizer or whatever. And I had this idea. I mean, initially I was planning to just make like pigs in a blanket with them because my kids have been asking for that. After when it came to what was that? It was Saturday, one of the two. I was just like, I don't want to put forth the time and effort it's going to take to make these all into pigs in a blanket. And so then I thought of the jambalaya pasta as an option. And I will say I will never use Little Smokies for that again, because Little Smokies are just not very good. They're good when they're with the sauce that they're typically served with as an appetizer. And I don't know if they do that over on the East Coast, but they do it all over the place elsewhere. But with the jambalaya pasta, they're not very good. But otherwise, it was good. The sauce started out a bit thin, but after it had a chance to sit with the pasta for a while, it actually thickened up well to where it was worked out nicely. And the flavor was really good. The shrimp was good in it. Just next time I would make it, I would definitely do either kielbasa or andouille sausage instead. But otherwise, it was a pretty good experiment. So there was that, at least. But yeah, I feel like I'm forgetting something, but probably everything else I can think of is all just gaming related, because that's more been my downtime lately. But yeah.
What kind of pasta did you use?
I can't remember the name of the noodles, but it's like macaroni noodles, except that they're twirly.
Cavatappi?
Probably.
By chance?
I think so. I never pay attention because we hardly ever get it, so it's like we just happen to have some in there, and it's like, okay, this will go well with it, and it did. Yeah, the flavor was really good though. I just used the recipe from Better Homes and Gardens, their cookbook for the jambalaya, but then instead of doing the rice and cooking it that way, I just did pasta, and then I cooked the pasta part way on its own, and then cooked it the rest of the way in the sauce. So
Interesting. I'll definitely have to look into that, doing that sometime, because
yeah,
I never would have thought about doing that.
yeah. I mean, like I said, apart from the Little Smokies, it was very good. And I mean, I'm kind of glad that it wasn't real good that the Little Smokies themselves weren't that great in it, because then I'm less tempted to eat a bunch of them because they're a lot higher calorie than the rest of the meal. It's like the total amount of calories, because it's like I make a huge batch so that there's enough for a meal, and then some to put in the fridge, and then a big tray that I can stick in the freezer for a future meal. And I think that, like, if I count the calories for those, for the Little Smokies, that's like a third of the calories right there for the entire batch. And like I did the calculation, it was like, I think altogether was just under 200 ounces was the total weight for everything. And minus the Little Smokies was about 2 pounds of that, so about 32 ounces. And so it was like, I want to say almost 3,000 calories of that total huge batch was just the Little Smokies. And so it's like, I had a few. It's like, I don't really like these, but the kids like them, so, they can enjoy them. And the next time I make it, I'll make it with much better sausage, because kielbasa and andouille are delicious. And Little Smokies, I like them as an appetizer in that sauce, but that's about the only way that I like eating them now. So, yeah. Anyway, what have you been playing this week?
All right, so not a whole lot from me, but I do have a couple of things. So first up is Core Keeper. My friends and I got back into playing this some more, and we ventured out some more, and I don't know how much of this stuff was, I guess, back in the earlier part of the game and how much had been expanded upon, but the overall map is much larger than I expected, because each section is broken up into rings. And so you have the initial base part of the game, which is essentially the center, I guess you could say the one ring, and then you break out into what I thought was the final part of the game, which was technically the hard mode, and that was like its own ring. And I'm like, all right, cool, that's the part. And then they said, oh no, there's actually more. And I'm thinking to myself, there's more. So there are at least 2 more rings that we have to go to like branch out into. So we did that, some exploring. We found some supplies here and there, found some resources to just work on stuff to improve our equipment. And then we went and fought one of the next bosses, which is essentially just like a giant scarab. And he was definitely tricky, because he can pin you in a corner, and if you're in a corner, you're essentially going to get 3 shots if your health and defense aren't high enough, which happened to my friend one time, and then I think that either got me during one of the replays, because we were trying to just farm loot. So it's like either that, or he also fires scarabs that just hone in on you, and those were a pain in the butt to deal with. So yeah, he wasn't as bad as some of the other bosses we fought, but at the same time, a few of his gimmicks were just to work with. But yeah, we definitely made some progress. I got a new armor set that helps with my summons, but I think I might just drop it, because the armor set I had before gave me a whole lot more mana, which was great if I want to actually be offensive and use spells. Whereas with this one, sure, I can summon more. I can summon, I think, maybe 1 or 2 more creatures to help me out, but at the same time though, it decreases my overall mana pool, so I don't think the trade-off is worth it on that end. So I'll decide what I want to do the next time around. But then, I guess no one's surprised, I've been playing some more Power World. And there are a couple things that I actually forgot to mention last week, which were some changes that were made into the 1.0 version of the game. The first one is actually a new mechanic called Rampage versions of pals, and these are essentially just much stronger, harder enemies. They aren't categorized as being a mini boss or a boss or anything like that, but they're just strong. I mean, they have their own sort of dedicated big health bar on the screen, but they randomly spawn throughout the map. And so they are essentially the same pals you normally face, but they're much stronger, larger, and they have certain unique moves that the normal pals don't have. Additionally, you can't actually catch them. I tried several times and I kept failing. Then I realized when I looked up online, I saw that you actually aren't able to catch them. So I was like, all right, I just wasted a bunch of spheres for nothing. But they can be definitely quite challenging, even if you look at their level and say, okay, it's roughly the same level as me. It's not that big of a deal. The problem is they're still just stronger than your normal pal. Like they probably would be maybe roughly around as powerful as a mini boss version of the pals, but at the same time, I think they might slightly be stronger or faster than them just because of how of their movesets and their attack patterns and stuff. So they definitely have been a bit of a challenge, and once there were actually 3 that spawned at the same time, and it almost got me, but fortunately I had one of my pals just lure them away. They walked off a cliff, and they essentially just died because of that. But otherwise, I would not have survived that encounter at all. One of them, sure, but 3 of them, no, not so much. Then the other thing that is new, or at least has been adjusted, is that raid battles on your base, actually, you do have more time to prepare for them than you did before. In the early access version of the game, whenever there was going to be an attack on your base, you would just have about maybe 30 seconds before enemies started showing up. Now, whenever a raid is about to happen, someone comes to your base who's noted as a negotiator and is like essentially saying, hey, you can stop this from happening if you pay up. And so, you're sort of getting strong-armed into just, paying out on that. So you can pay a fee and avoid it. I don't, because, I don't negotiate with terrorists.
Right.
So you have about 5 minutes to prepare and stuff. And fortunately, even if you're attacked in the middle of the night, while your pals normally would be asleep, whenever the attack does happen, they will wake up and help fend the base before going back to bed.
Yeah.
But the best thing I found out later on was, because normally I want to fight and I'm like, okay, I don't want to wait 5 minutes before the fight happens. You can actually just shoot him, and then the attack begins. Nice. Which is, I'm like, all right, that's cool. That speeds things up.
Yeah.
So that's definitely been a big help there. But then stuff that has happened as a result this past week is I faced the next tower boss fight, which was Axel and Orzurk. This fight, I would say, I did manage to beat him the first time, but I would say he still had a bit of bite to him, which I think is definitely great, because I did feel that the first 2 bosses were relatively easier, on the easier side of things, so I'm glad that he actually gave me a bit of a challenge. I didn't really have to switch. Actually, I don't think I switched out my pal at all. I mean, I pulled him back just to save him from taking unnecessary damage, but overall, I think I didn't have to switch to any other pals. I just had to use the same one, so that was fine. But yeah, his arena also, I could tell, had been changed, and he did have, I think, at least one new attack, which was, I think, creating a cage around the arena, and if you got trapped in the cage, then you essentially were going to have to be stuck in there until it either wore off, or you tried to, I guess, maybe take a chance to just try to dodge out of the cage and take some damage just to get away from him. So I thought the fight was well enough. I've made some more progress on constructing my base. I've added some more systems just to help mine resources. I think I'm probably going to add at least maybe one more floor, maybe 2 more floors, depending on how things go, just because I still want to be sort of more efficient with things. And I also want to make sure that I'm able to have as much or have as many resources as I need, just to keep, have my pals crafting things while I'm away, and so that way I can come back, get more ammo when I need to, or if I need to get more pal spheres, that's available as well. And food still hasn't been an issue. The food is probably the best, is probably the easiest thing that you can farm, because that's just, they're just constantly making food. It's constantly being grown, and so I don't have to worry about that. But as far as with minerals, ores, and stuff, that's something that I do have to be mindful of right now. But I have what I need for the moment, but it's just for later on I'll need to get more stuff. And then last thing for me is that I'm currently in the desert area, and this part is definitely starting to be a bit of a wall for me, just because the enemies here are a whole lot tougher. Even with the better weapons that I have right now, even with the better armor I have, they're still just very strong. And so I do have to get better equipment, and part of me is still wondering, should I because I have unlocked better armor, I think maybe better weapons, but I think definitely just the armor in general is better. But at the same time, I don't want to waste resources on armor right now when I could just find the schematics to build better armor later on and not have to worry about wasting resources again. So that's where I'm sort of toying around right now with the idea of which would I rather do. I might break down and just craft the armor, so that way I have better defense, but I'll see what I do later on. But yeah, that's where I am with that, and that is everything I've played this past week.
All right, nice. Trying to think here. I had something I was going to say about Pal World, and I don't quite remember what it was. I guess it wasn't anything all that important, but I'm just glad that it's been a good experience with 1.0. So not much more to say on that end. All right, so stuff that I've been playing this week. First of all, I have to mention this. I don't have any footage on this laptop because I completely forgot until like 2 minutes ago. I remembered that, oh yes, I played something else and I just forgot to bring the footage over from my desktop, so I'll just have to get that copied over and then I can include it. But I did play some Destiny 2 over the weekend, mostly because originally, so I think it was maybe Thursday or something, sometime late last week, that my nephew had wanted to play, and I was at the time, oh yeah, it was last Thursday, so Thursday I was wanting to play Destiny 2, or rather, my nephew wanted to play Destiny 2, and I think, okay, let me back up slightly. So Wednesday evening, my wife was going to watch a podcast, one of her Wheel of Time podcasts that hadn't done a live show in a while, and so she wanted to get in on that. I wasn't super interested in listening to it. She knew I wouldn't be. And so I thought, oh, well, I'll use this opportunity to play some Destiny 2. And so I hopped on and was playing with one of my buddies, Soder. And so he and I just played for a bit, went through a few more missions on my third character for the Final Shape campaign. Just did that for a little bit. And my nephew kept messaging me while I was playing because he wanted to play with me. But the problem is I was in the middle of a mission, so I couldn't easily just back out And so I messaged him later and I said, hey, I can play with you tomorrow, but there's not a way for me to back out of these missions easily, and I can't add you because you don't have the expansions. So it just, didn't work out from that standpoint. And so then I got on Thursday with the intention that I would play with my nephew. Having told him and reminding him, hey, I'll be on here shortly. And then I got on, and he never got on, so I didn't end up getting to play with him. But yeah, so then I played that a bit. But apart from that, there are 2 games I played the most by far, and then 2 games I played just a little bit today. I think I'll start with the games that I played a little bit today, because they're not games I'm really necessarily getting into right now, but at the same time, stuff that I did play. The first of those, I think part of it was maybe something we had discussed. Yeah, it was last week we had talked about Final Fantasy games and stuff. That and just listening to someone's stream, Sigs and Serial. I was listening to his fanboy stream making fun of fanboys and lolcows, and one of which was, of course, Darkside Phil. But Darkside Phil was talking about Final Fantasy VI and how it was his favorite RPG and stuff. I was like, yep, I agree with you. That's a great RPG. And I had not played in quite a while, and I still had the Pixel remaster, and I just kind of got a hankering to play it. So I booted that up on my Switch OLED and was playing that for a bit. Didn't play a whole lot today. I played probably like half hour to 45 minutes, something like that. Basically just kind of a little bit moving the needle forward on the story from where I last left off. I was going to try to do it on the Switch 2 just for the sake of not having to worry about connecting, like moving cables around to be able to record on my computer. But the save is on the Switch OLED and not on the Switch 2, and since I don't have cloud saves because I don't have Switch Online, even though I could do a manual transfer, I was just like, what, I'll just hook up the Switch OLED and record it that way, because that's where I really want to play it anyway, because it looks really nice on that screen. So yeah, didn't play a whole lot, but I do love this game, and man, that soundtrack is just so good. Because of course they fully reorchestrated all of the original soundtracks. So you can either listen to the original audio, or you can do the orchestrated soundtracks. And they also let you switch between the Pixel remaster visuals and the original visuals, which is pretty cool.
Ooh.
I did a little bit just for the sake of being like, okay, I was curious. At first I thought it was just like a filter that they put on top, but then I looked at it again and I'm like, no, I'm pretty sure that's the original visuals. Like, I think they might have it still with widescreen. Maybe they just add filters on to make it look like the original visuals. But anyway, so I was curious about that. Ultimately, I just settled on the Pixel remaster visuals and quite happy with that. The one thing I had to do, though, is for the text, they had the option of either having the text be like the new modern version of the text, which is more like an Arial kind of font, or going back to something that's more similar to the original font, except that it's smaller letters. And so I went with the original font because the other one, I just didn't like the way it looked. And it still doesn't quite bring that same level of nostalgia that you get playing like the Super Nintendo and other versions, but still quite good. And of course, it's just like, the game is fantastic. I truly love it. But I'm still not planning to play right now because it was more just, I kind of wanted to scratch that itch. And I was looking to see, okay, what does it cost for the soundtracks for these? And if you buy them like through Amazon, it's like $18 a soundtrack for each of the different Pixel remasters, which isn't unreasonable. But I'd rather have physical versions. And at first I thought, I would think that they would do a full bundle with all the soundtracks in a single bundle like they do with the games, and no, they don't do that. So, but the soundtracks are expensive. If you buy them physical, I only checked Play Asia and Amazon. Amazon didn't have the physical ones. Play Asia did. and it's like $40 for a soundtrack. I think one of them was like 29 and the other one was 39. It's just like, ugh. I mean, I'm definitely not buying that right now. And I should clarify, the two soundtracks that I was looking at were 4 and 6, because those are the two that I'm like, I love these games. I love their soundtracks. I would love to have orchestrated versions of these. But yeah, so I'm obviously not getting anything like that right now, but I definitely am thinking, at some point in the future I probably will, because I do really love these soundtracks, and it was nice revisiting that world a little bit and just enjoying the music. And at some point I probably will go back and play through it, because the last time I played through Final Fantasy VI fully was probably 20 years ago, on playing the PS1 version on my PS2. So it's been quite a while, but yeah, it's good stuff. But the other game that I ended up playing a little bit more so, just because it's been on my list, it's one of the games on my list of resolutions to complete this year, is Final Fantasy 13-2. Now, of course I'm playing this on the Steam Deck, mostly because these were not great PC ports, and so one of the problems that's a flaw with them is the fact that they, if you have cloud saves on, it increases the likelihood that the game's going to crash on you. And at least playing on Windows, it crashes frequently unless you apply some fan-produced fixes. And the fixes are also supposed to make it so that you can actually get 60 FPS and everything else, because otherwise it's stuck at 30. And fix a variety of other things, make them, work better with higher resolution displays and all that. So I was trying to apply some of these fixes on Steam Deck, mostly because I wanted to be able to get 60, because there's no reason that it shouldn't be able to do 60. I mean, it was a PS3/360 game, so there's zero reason that it shouldn't be able to hit 60 FPS. But unfortunately, the mod tool to install requires Microsoft.NET framework. But the problem is that .NET framework, if you try to install it when the tool launches, you install it and it doesn't recognize that it's installed. And there's no way to point it in the right direction that I could figure out. So ultimately I just decided not to worry about it and played for like an hour this evening. Just trying to move the needle a little bit, because this is a game that, like, I don't completely dislike the game. There are things I like about it, but I also kind of just want to be done with it, because it's been in my backlog for like 12 years. And like originally I had started to get into it when I was playing on PC. And then I fell off. And then I tried coming back to it years later and essentially couldn't remember where I was or anything like that. And then it started having issues with it crashing all the time. And then eventually I got it, and then I tried to get it working on Steam Deck, and then early on it did not work well on Steam Deck. Like, it had all sorts of problems. Then I finally got it working on Steam Deck, like probably 3 years ago. And I played a good chunk of the game, and then I kind of just hit a wall at a certain point. Partially in terms of difficulty, but also just in terms of not being sure where to go next, and then being a little bit annoyed. Like, there was a couple of optional boss fights that were just a bit too difficult. And if there's one thing about me that you probably learned over the years, is that I'm not typically a fan of grinding. And so, I just didn't feel like doing that, so I lowered the difficulty to easy and was trying to just kind of work my way through it. And but of course, like I had said at the beginning of this year, one of my goals for this year is to finish this game so that I can finally play the third Final Fantasy 13 game, and then, go from there, eventually play 15 and so on and so forth. But yeah, I just finally decided to jump back in and played a little bit today, and I mean, I guess I'm kind of moving the needle some. It's definitely going to be one that takes a while for me to kind of fully get my bearings again. And it's not one that I'm like, I'm definitely playing it thoroughly right now. It's probably more like when I finish the 2 main games that I'm working on, I might get back into it so that I can like really focus on it, because it would be good for me to actually really get back into this game, since it's something that has been, in my backlog forever. And there are things that I definitely like about the game. It's just one of those where there's just enough tedium to where I don't want to deal with it. Whenever I come across these things where it's like, oh, there's a bunch of mini games that you can do, and even though I think all of them are pretty much optional, I'm just like, I don't want to do any of these mini games. I just want to play the game normally. I just want to do the combat and the exploration, find some collectibles, that sort of thing. Mini games can be fun at times. Like some of the card games, like I do really enjoy Queen's Blood in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. But a lot of the other ones, I'm just like, I don't want to do this. This is a waste of my time. And so, yeah, there's all that. But anyway, so that's where I'm at with this game. Decent chance I'll be jumping back into it after I finish the other 2 games that I'm heavily working on right now. But then it's also kind of hard to say for sure if I'll be doing that, because I was reminded next month that the Metal Gear Solid collection is coming out. And so then I'm trying to decide, okay, when it comes to that, do I want to just go right back into 4 right away? Or do I want to finish going through 2 first? Or rather go back into Metal Gear Solid 2? Because I've only played through it once. And I did kind of want to replay it before I played 4 again. So it's kind of up in the air at the moment from that standpoint. But that's completely a side note. Main games I've been playing. So first of all, there is Assassin's Creed Black Flag Resynced. Now, first thing I will mention is I played a lot on my desktop, a little bit on my Steam Deck, and a fair amount on my laptop. The footage that's playing here currently is playing Steam Deck footage. I did end up, after a bit, I did encounter a spot when I was in Kingston where, with the dynamic resolution and everything, the frame rate did chug in a couple of spots. Like, it did have some stuttering issues, at which point I switched over to my laptop and then have not played on the Steam Deck since then. I haven't decided if I'll play any more on the Steam Deck or not, but I have, I did a little bit. And on the laptop, of course, as I mentioned last week, looks and runs a lot better than it does on the Steam Deck. And of course, it gets 60 FPS, and in the footage right now, actually, you'll see here very shortly that it will switch from the Steam Deck to the laptop, and you'll notice the change immediately, because it's a pretty dramatic change. And like, the Steam Deck footage doesn't look bad, and I'm sure, having watched it last week in the video podcast, you probably saw like the Steam Deck actually looked pretty good. But when you see the change from the Steam Deck to the laptop, it's like, wow, that's a dramatic difference in terms of visual quality and, of course, frame rate running at 60 versus 30. But yeah, so like I've made some pretty decent progress in the game. I can't remember where I am in terms of story, like as far as how far I am in the overall story, but I want to say I'm probably like 2/3 of the way through the story. I haven't done a ton of the side stuff, mostly because I've been trying to get more upgrades for like my ship and everything, and then getting all of my different types of abilities and weapons and everything that you get as part of the story, because that makes it easier to do some of the other stuff. And in some ways, I was kind of starting to wonder, I wonder if they made things a little more grindy in this one versus the original version, just for the sake of like making it basically extending the playtime. But then I thought about it some more today, and it occurred to me, when I played the original Black Flag, I was doing the side stuff constantly as I was going along. But I haven't been doing that nearly as much this time, at least in part because some of the stuff just ends up being a little too hard, like some of the ship combat related things particularly. Going after convoys or taking down some of the like higher level ships and that sort of thing. And so I think what I really need to do is I need to spend some time working on side activities more, and then just like things like the naval contracts and that sort of thing that require a higher level ship I might have to hold off on for the time being. But it bugs me so much when I go through an area, I have access to all of the different things on the checklist, but some of them are just much higher difficulty than everything else, instead of it being like, oh, well, this particular area, it's, the mission is this difficulty level, and the next area, the higher level area, it's a higher difficulty, and so on and so forth, which is what it should be, in my opinion. But then sometimes it's like, oh, this is a low level area, or, this area is one that is an area you access earlier, but these particular activities, specifically the naval contracts especially, are much higher level, and so you end up you basically can't do them right away, and so you just have to come back to them later. So that's been interesting from that standpoint. I was thinking some more about like differences between this and the original game. And one of the things that definitely stood out to me, I mean, obviously we've talked about it, and I've mentioned that this one doesn't have any of the modern day stuff. And in one sense, that's actually really nice, because obviously the main piratey stuff, all the exploration, the checklists, all that stuff, is the best part of the game, without question. However, at the same time, I also realized that modern day stuff actually really helped to break things up well, to where it kind of like, it was kind of just a breather in terms of going through the same content over and over, and then you have like these breaks where you're moving slower and you're not getting to do any of the piratey stuff, but then it makes you appreciate the piratey stuff that much more when you get back to it. And so that's something that I kind of feel like that is one downside of them getting rid of the modern day stuff. But it's not the worst thing in the world. But then another thing that came up that I thought about, one thing that is a very positive quality of life thing is the fact that you can actually toggle crouching, because in the original version of Black Flag, you automatically crouch when you go into bushes and, tall grass and that sort of thing. But then when you get out, you automatically stand up, and there's no way to manually crouch. And so being able to manually crouch makes it so that you're not awkwardly standing up when you get outside of the bushes, and instead you can, crouch walk over to the next set of bushes or whatever. And so that definitely helps a lot from that standpoint. What's some differences in like the oh gosh, what was it that I was going to say? The fact that there's no tailing missions in this, or the limited amount of tailing that you have to do. There's no like instant fail on the tailing stuff. If you fail on if you accidentally get seen, you can just fight the enemies. You don't have to restart the whole mission, which is very, very helpful, because that got really obnoxious in the original game. But I'm trying to think of what other differences there are. But like the more I think about it, there are definitely things that I still like better about the original version, and I feel like the original version had a really good balance with everything. I just wish that the original version could have some of the quality of life improvements that this one has, especially the crouching thing. That is extremely helpful. And yes, obviously I was able to deal with it in those games. I mean, Black Flag was the first one I played, but it never made sense to me why you couldn't manually crouch, especially since older games, not Assassin's Creed, but older games in general, like the Arkham games, for example, you could crouch manually. But so much of the other stuff, it just worked out fine. And So it's been interesting from that standpoint. I keep thinking about, that question that you asked me of which one people should buy. And it's still hard to say, but in some ways I almost think I probably would recommend the original over this if a person was completely new to the series and did not mind not having the shiniest visuals and everything else. Because the original, well, I guess it also depends on where they want to play it. Because if they want to play with better performance, they're better off getting this version, at least on consoles. Now on the Switch, you only have just the original. You don't have Resynced yet. I'm sure it'll come in the future. And hopefully it'll actually run better than it does in Steam Deck. I would hope so. Hopefully. But then if you're playing on PC, if you have the option of PC or Steam Deck, or any other PC handheld, I would say, well, you're definitely going to have a better experience in terms of performance playing the original. And I did look back at the footage from the original Black Flag, and it definitely was running well above 60. I don't know what it actually was running at, and unfortunately I had uninstalled the game and just hadn't gotten around to reinstalling it to check and see. But it was definitely running very well in terms of the frame rate. So it was higher frame rate than what I'm getting in Resynced, but Resynced I'm still getting over 100 FPS as the normal. So it's really not a problem. And that's even with, I should say, on my desktop I'm getting over 100 FPS with native resolution the whole time, and then getting basically locked 60 on my laptop with dynamic resolution, where I have never noticed it dropping below 100%, even though I know it definitely does. I just don't know exactly to what extent it does, because otherwise it wouldn't maintain 60 perfectly at 1440p. So, but yeah, I can't think if there's anything else to say about Resynced. I feel like there's something I'm forgetting about that I was going to mention, but I forgot to take notes about the different things that I wanted to say about it. So if I think of something, I'll make sure to write it down for next week. But this has been one of the two main games I've played this past week. The other one being Salt and Sacrifice. So something that I have to mention with this game. I had talked about, of course, the differences in fighting the bosses, the named bosses versus the unnamed bosses. And so it's, you start up a hunt. When you go after the named boss, it's, one way. And then the unnamed bosses, I forgot that there actually is, you actually start a hunt for those as well, but they can also appear as unnamed versions when you're wandering. When you do the ones where you specifically select to go and fight this unnamed boss, the unnamed boss is actually a harder version of the named boss. So, as an example, there is the, I'm trying to remember, I want to say, it's not Technomancer, but it's something like that. It's basically, one that uses, like, Mechanomancer, that's what he's called. So, there's the Mechanomancer. I can't remember what the original boss's, like, name was, but when you fight him the first time, the named version of him, he has much more limited attack spectrum, but he's still kind of hard. Like, I think he probably took me 2 tries or something like that. Not overly difficult, but still difficult enough. But when you fight the nameless version, he gains like 2 or 3 additional attacks, which include throwing a bunch of grenades that if they hit you, they do damage, and if they explode, they basically kill you. Or if you're near them when they explode, they kill you. And then on top of that, he also has like these poison missiles that he fires at you. And to make matters even better, as you are getting down to him from the save point, you have to deal with a bunch of random enemies that are all very obnoxious to deal with. And then to make matters even worse on top of that, a lot of those enemies can come into the arena with you. So even if you try to take them out as you go, which is not always the easiest thing because some of them are harder to take care of, particularly at least with how I was doing things, you end up in a spot where it's like, okay, I'm having to try and avoid his super powerful attacks. You know, healing myself as much as I need to, but then also trying to keep enough distance to where I can shoot him with arrows and, you know, various other issues. And then you have some of these obnoxious enemies showing up in the arena on top of that. And sometimes that's helpful because sometimes they'll damage the boss, which helps, you know, reduce the amount of damage that you have to do and draws his attention away. But then at other times, they end up killing me as I'm trying to fight the boss, or they're stunning me or something while I'm trying to avoid the boss's super powerful attacks, and it just ends up being a nightmare to deal with. So that one took me so many tries, it was ridiculous. And when I finally beat him, I just like basically breathed a sigh of relief and was very, very happy. Thankfully, that's the one where I actually got the full fight recorded on my through my capture card, whereas the rest of the fights, I recorded all of them, just recording the last 30 seconds with the Switch capture thing. Unfortunately, the Switch capture is still 720 low quality 720p 30 frames per second, so it's like, okay, you're dealing with that, but at least the game, you know, plays well and runs well on the system itself, so there's that. But in addition to those, I've also fought a handful of other of the mages, both named and unnamed, and then like I want to say 3 or 4 proper bosses. I don't even remember their names. There was like one where it was you know, 2 bosses in one encounter, and then there was another where it was a guy that throughout the game, each time you encounter him, if you give him the item that basically restores his humanity, then he you know, he'll thank you and leave, and I think he, you know, usually gives you something. The last time I encountered him, I didn't have any of those items available, and I don't know if it was like this is a specific thing that's scripted that you have to fight him here regardless, or if it's only if you don't have the item handy. And I just decided, okay, I'm just going to go ahead and fight him and see how things go. And, you know, it took me a few tries to beat him, but if I knew what his name was, I would have looked him up, because I definitely was curious about whether this was one like where there's a separate quest related to it, and if you give him enough of these items, then eventually, you know, he'll help you with the final boss or what have you, or if it's just like, okay, you are guaranteed that at a certain point you have to fight him regardless. So, but this is the first time that he ever attacked me, so that tells me that more likely than not, it was a situation where I was supposed to fight him. But yeah, the last boss I beat was this dragon, and once I beat the dragon, I went and talked to like an NPC that basically gave me the location to this, or what I need to get to this location that I believe is the final area of the game. However, because of the fact that I do actually want to beat all of the different named and unnamed mages, and, you know, make sure I beat all the optional bosses and optional bosses, I'm not going to go to that area until I've, you know, completed the rest of the stuff. So I'm trying to come as close to 100%ing the game as I can. More or less, the idea here is primarily I'm looking at the bestiary and trying to make sure that I complete that, because if I complete that, then I'll know that I've beaten all the different named and unnamed mages. and all the bosses and that sort of thing. So I think I probably have like 60 to 70% of the bestiary completed, but honestly, I would just have to double check it again and go from there. So it's definitely it's a game that like I enjoy it overall. I definitely like Salt and Sanctuary better though. I definitely understand more and more why people criticize the game the way they did. You know, the Monster Hunter-esque aspects can be annoying at times. I definitely like better having just a set number of bosses without, you know, like enemies, big bosses respawning and that sort of thing. Or well, in that, you know, they randomly appear Monster Hunter-esque and you have to either avoid them or fight them. Because at times it wasn't too bad. Like there are times where I'll encounter these ones in the wild and I'll just like kind of slowly pitch away at them until they eventually leave or I, you know, kill them. But then other times it's just really obnoxious when one of them shows up and I'm trying to get back to like the actual boss that I'm hunting, or I'm trying to just get back to my salt, or I'm trying to get back to one of the sanctuary points. And then, you know, I lose all my salt permanently, or I just have to keep going back here. I mean, at least on the plus side, when you are hunting one of the mages, or whenever you're hunting one of the mages, anytime you die, it asks you, do you want to continue the hunt? And so then, you know, when you respawn, you can continue, and it still kind of like gives you like a fog trail sort of that points you back to where the boss is, whether it's in the actual final arena or just sitting somewhere else. You know, before you do enough damage for them to move on. But I would like it a lot better if it was more like Salt and Sanctuary, where you have a set number of bosses, they appear in a specific spot, and you don't have to deal with these things constantly respawning, or, you know, constantly showing back up. Because even though it's not the same closed arena each time you fight them, in fact, it's not a closed arena for any of the ones that randomly spawn, it still just can be obnoxious, and I'm not really interested in the Monster Hunter aspect of it. Like, I don't really want to take the time to try and, you know, grind for whatever items so that I can get certain pieces of gear. Now, I definitely have found that there's some really cool weapons that have like some nice useful perks and that sort of thing. Most notably, there was one of the weapons I have that has an ability where if you hold down ZL and press X, you can fire off a series of like ice crystals at the boss, and so like it's a good way to do some damage and like run away, and it, you know, it's like homing shots, so it's pretty nifty. And then just like drink the potion thing that I need in order to replenish my magic points, and then I can, you know, go in and attack them and everything like that. So that can be useful. But yeah, I guess other thing I want to point out is that I've definitely noticed it's a very good idea to not always use the same weapon every time in fights, because there are some encounters where it's like, okay, it's much better for me to use a spear here because of the fact that I can do a lot more rapid hits. And there's other times where it's like, okay, it's better to go with katana in this case. For a while there, I was using a scythe, and I still use it occasionally, but now I've kind of reverted back more to spears and swords. Partially because of elements, but also because of just the speed at which I can swing them. And since I am a dexterity build, then it definitely helps not having to deal as much with weapons that are a little slower. So. But yeah, that's everything. That's all the games.
Okay. So several. Let me sort of be working my way backwards. So with Salt and Sacrifice, one question I guess you had mentioned this, and so you said that the optional bosses, or at least the ones that do spawn, if you sort of like get caught up in one, it prevents you from targeting the main boss you were fighting before, or tracking.
No, not exactly. What it is that basically it's just if one of them shows up while you're hunting another boss, it really just it can stun lock you essentially. It's not like you're not locked in an arena or anything. They just show up and they just become a nuisance essentially. Just like big monsters in Monster Hunter. So
yeah, okay, that makes much more. Excuse me, that makes sense then. Yeah, I can see that being annoying. Regarding, well, actually, let me figure out how I want to phrase this. I guess by one, or no, I'm sorry, that was a different question. I was gonna ask for a different game. So regarding the one NPC, who you can like gift the basic humanity to, for him and slowly get him to recover, has up until like the end, has it like has he done anything essentially for you? Has he provided you with anything?
Yeah, I mean, I think like, usually whenever I give him the crystal thing, whatever it's called, usually he'll give me some kind of item if I remember correctly. But it's like I only encounter him once in a great while, so it's kind of a few and far between thing. I don't know if it's more like Solaire kind of situation where, you know, you help him enough and then eventually he does something significant for you, like helping you fight the final boss, or if it's more like you just can give him them up to a certain point and then that's it. But I have a feeling that it probably was the former, and unfortunately I just didn't feel like taking the time to go and track down some of those items, because it's like I know how I can get them, and that's primarily by going after the enemies that the different mages will spawn, because they have a chance to drop those items. That's the easiest way to get those. But because I was already there, I was just like, you know, I kind of just want to fight him and see what happens, and I kind of regret that now. But ultimately it doesn't matter too much, especially since I'm playing on Switch. There's no achievements, so like if I was ever in a spot where I actually wanted to go back and play Salt and Sacrifice, I probably would play on Steam. But I'm also not sure if I ever will go back to it after I finish it, because although there's things I like about it and I wouldn't mind trying out different builds, there's enough that annoys me about it to where I kind of feel like if I was going to do anything, it would be either going back to Salt and Sanctuary, because at some point I need to do that anyway for the remaining achievements, or just playing one of the other 2D Souls Troidvania or Souls-likes that I have available to me, because then I could, you know, get a new experience while at the same time also scratching that itch.
On that sort of, I guess, topic, I am now curious. Did you go through Solaire's quest line in, I mean, any of your many Dark Souls runs? Did you ever complete his runs completely?
I've never let him turn. I've always taken care of the I can't remember what the name of the bug is, but I've always killed the bug before he got it.
Okay. Yeah, I was just always curious, because when you mentioned that, I was like, yeah, it does sort of remind me of Solaire. It's like you keep helping him with his quest, and then at the end, it's just he turns on you, essentially.
Yeah.
And I was sort of also wondering if that was something you could prevent in this case as well.
Yeah.
Which is also makes sense if you're trying to help him regain his humanity, only for him to just like turn on you. I was like, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know how I feel about that.
I have a feeling that's probably what it is. It's probably just that if I had the item available, I could have helped him recover again, and then it probably would have just been like, okay, after a certain point, this is where you get... I mean, I had thought about trying to see if I could copy my save file and then see what would happen if I went back and got the stuff, but I just decided not to, and, you know, now I won't know unless I play the game over again. one thing I was going to say that with Solaire that's interesting Dark Souls lore. So at least the theory, I don't know if it's actually true because there's no like definitive confirmation in game, but I can't remember the name of the area in Dark Souls 3, but it's the one where you fight the one that's like the Fire Sage demon, and there's like a giant worm that you have to avoid.
Mm-hmm.
That worm, supposedly in the lore, is a fully matured version of that bug that infects Solaire, in which case that worm might actually be Solaire. And I think that when you kill it, it drops. I can't remember what it drops, but Sunlight Maggot is the name of the bug. That's what it was. But yeah, I was looking at that earlier today, like just a lore video thing that mentioned that, and it's like, that's certainly possible. But then someone else pointed out, it's very possible because the weird way that time works in Dark Souls, that Solaire could be both simultaneously either that worm or the Soul of Cinder. If he decided to link the fire. If he, made it there and linked the fire. So that's just an interesting, thing.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it does make sense with the giant centipede being a fully mature version of the Sunlight Maggot, especially considering the fact that there are so many parallels with 3 with 1.
Yeah.
That I could see that having some weight to it. So that's interesting.
So here's another random piece from that I learned from the same channel, and that's that in Dark Souls 2, the very first boss you fight, is, I can't remember the name of it, but it's just like that big giant with no face, and it's like basically a withered husk, but it's like super aggressive towards you. And when you get to a later point in the game, there's like a point where you have to basically, you're going back in time and then you're fighting one of these giants. And the theory, at least, and I'm pretty sure that it's accurate, is that version of the giant that you're facing in the past is the past version of the one you faced at the beginning of the game. And that basically, while for you it's later in the game, it's kind of like he hates you because you were the one who killed him in the first place.
Oh, wow. That's really cool.
So much of this lore stuff is really cool, and knowing now something that I never really fully realized before, that in Dark Souls most of the lore is explained through the items you pick up. The next time I play through any one of those games, I'm just going to start reading the descriptions of every item, because I want to kind of like pick up on all of that stuff more, because I've watched some lore videos and those are super interesting, but it definitely would make me appreciate the lore that much more, seeing it in those contexts. So
going back to Assassin's Creed, I would like to have a bit more clarification, I guess, regarding what you meant about the modern stuff breaking things up, which helps with the later games as opposed to 4. Do you mean like it broke up the pacing, or is it like?
Yeah, I was just talking about breaking up the pacing. So okay. And when I talk about the modern stuff, I'm talking about, because in Black Flag you would go out of the simulation, out of the Animus back into, the modern day world, and you'd be, going around the office and eventually do some like hacking stuff and whatnot.
Okay, so that's what you meant, like, for the... Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, just in the original game, of course. In the modern games, they actually don't have a whole lot of going outside of the Animus.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not certain how I feel about that in that case then,
Yeah.
because I kind of, well, or I guess let me put it like this. I suppose to an extent, I didn't mind a whole lot with Desmond.
Yeah.
Just because I knew there was at least a character I knew, but then when I played Black Flag, I was more like, who are you? I don't even know who you
Right.
are
Yeah,
right now.
absolutely.
And so then I was like, I don't know if I don't know, I guess it broke the flow a bit to me. So I was like, I'd rather just be completely in the Animus.
Yeah.
Um so yeah, I can see either way, but I guess depending on the execution of it.
Yeah.
But
And I mean,
yeah.
to be clear, like the modern day stuff was not all good, and there were times where it's like, oh, this feels really, really slow because, of course, your movement's a lot slower, and
Mm,
early on, there's not a whole lot you can do. It's just like little by little. Then eventually, you get like the higher level key cards, and then you can do more stuff. But um, it for me more than anything, it was just the fact that it did. Yes, it broke that up a little bit, but at sometimes that was actually kind of helpful because it made me appreciate the pirate stuff that much more. So that's why I'm like really mixed on whether or not I miss it. And I think I'll be able to say much better once I really get more into doing all of the different activities. Um, but yeah, it's just kind of a personal preference thing, and that's part of the reason why I say I'm still a little conflicted on which version of the game I like better.
and I guess that's another sort of comparison between the original and the recent version. Um, I guess regarding the side content, have you just really been solely dedicated to the main story, and that's why you haven't been as focused with
So
or had a desire to play the side
it's
stuff?
been kind of both. The main thing is like I haven't been doing as much exploration around the map, partially because of the fact that my ship has been underpowered, and because of the fact that ship is underpowered, you can't like take down forts very easily because uh, they just do way too much damage, and you don't have enough ship armor and everything. So, but then when I actually unlocked all of the different types of activities, like the ship contracts and that sort of thing, then I would come across contracts where I could not deal with the ships because there was a ship that was just too strong, like it was doing too much damage to me, and I couldn't do enough damage to it to actually be able to complete the contract. And so then that kind of pulled me away from that. And so then I went back to the main story because I wanted to get more of the main stuff I need in order to actually be able to complete more of the side stuff. Because I like doing the
Oh,
side stuff usually as I go, but there comes a certain point when it's like, okay, I can't actually do this side stuff yet.
okay. Yeah, I was just curious if it was a matter of, when you played it originally, if you're like, oh, okay, yeah, I don't mind doing the side stuff right now, or whereas right now you're just like, man, I'm enjoying this main story campaign
Mm-hmm.
right so much that I don't really want to worry about it right now or
Yeah.
not. Okay. And then I had a question regarding Final Fantasy 13 too. Um, you, and this is also sort of regarding the side stuff, and I can definitely agree that it does seem like there's a lot of side content in these games that it just isn't worth my time or attention. Is anything or are a lot of these side games, quest mission stuff tied to any achievements, or is it just like,
I don't
because you
know,
said they were
but
sort of
I don't
optional?
care enough from that standpoint. Actually, I'm not even sure. I think this game has achievements, but honestly, I don't remember if it does or not. Let's see here. Does it have achievements? Yeah, it does have achievements, but I mean, like I don't think I would have much interest in doing that, especially because I'd probably have to replay the game on a higher difficulty and stuff, and it's like, I don't care that much.
Okay. I think those were all my questions.
All right, sounds good. So this week we're back to talking about the news, and there have been a few different things that have come up, but I guess we should probably start off with one of the more negative topics to just kind of get it out of the way. And that is the fact that both PlayStation and Xbox have had their networks go down this past week. The PlayStation actually had to go down for, I think it was about 8 hours, and they said nothing during that entire time, of course. And then Xbox had their network go down, I believe it was yesterday. It was either yesterday or Sunday. And they said, and they did give updates as things were happening, but it was a longer stretch of time that it was down. And on top of that, it also made it so that people who, well, for one, with PlayStation, any digital games that were downloaded could only be played if they had their console set as their primary console. And then physical games, for the most part, work just fine. But on the Xbox side, physical games didn't work, and digital games only worked if it was set as their primary console. So, of course, we're going into this presumably all digital future, and it's not looking good for all of that. But what are your thoughts?
Well, this is very interesting, or it's embarrassing for Sony in light of the whole, hey, we're getting rid of our discs starting in 2028. And so it's like, wow, you just gave another reason as to why people should not just want to have an all digital PlayStation 6. It's ridiculous. It's like you said, it goes to show why this is an issue, and the fact that it was even worse for Microsoft, who, even though they actually issued a statement, the fact that you had physical discs that people still weren't able to play their games, just goes to show you, for one thing, how you really need, or how there needs to be more ownership in the hands of consumers, because whether it's because of some sort of, I guess, for lack of better words, DRM, where the game has to check in with a server, just to verify the keys or whatever, or maybe just because maybe the discs have to download something from the internet rather than maybe just having a compressed version of the game that they can install onto their system. Well, either way, something just isn't right, where you have to, and it even shows that, hey, years from now, those discs probably won't be worth using because, for one reason or another, you just can't use them because it requires some other server that the discs can't connect to.
Yeah.
So it's really just a big issue all around. But yeesh, I mean, at least, even though I still think it was a worse situation, at least Microsoft said something.
Yeah.
I mean, Sony has been burying their heads in the sand, whenever someone mentions, hey, what about physical? And it's like, what? La la la, can't hear you.
Yeah.
What? I'm just ignoring it. And I think it's even also funny when Sony's end, because this past weekend was supposed to be the beta launch, or the test, the online beta test of their Marvel Tokyo Fighting Souls game, which is like, yeah, it's supposed to be when you're supposed to test, how the game performs online, or like how the servers are running, and see people can test it out. And for a good while, no one could do anything because the servers were not working. And I do believe that later on someone said that the reason why Sony had the issues was because of Amazon Web Service or whatnot. But I'm like, all right, that might be the case, and it might be because of Amazon's web servers going through something. But at the same time, the fact is that if you're trying to rely on Sony, if you're having to rely on an online connection, because people always say like, yeah, well, I'm always online anyway, so what difference does it make? You people make it a big deal, like everyone's online anyway. It's like, sure, you might be online, what if their servers aren't?
Right.
And this isn't the first time that Sony servers have been down before.
Yeah.
So it just goes to show you why always online connectivity, DRM, is a horrible thing for the consumer and
customer. We don't use the word consumer anymore.
Yes, the customer. Yes. And so it's why people defend it and say like, oh, it doesn't matter. It's like, it's the future, okay?
Yeah.
I'm like, no, you should not be trying to defend these practices. It does not make sense at all. But then also, I mean, like, I couldn't confirm this one, but I heard that across the board, Microsoft stuff was going down. So if you were using like Outlook, Teams, anything related to Microsoft Online, it was just not working at all. So I don't know what happened with Microsoft, but that was definitely an issue on its own. But at the end of the day, though, this just really shows you why, definitely on the console side, digital is not the way to go in the future. And if you really want to enjoy your games, definitely get them physical. And at the very least, I mean, barring the key cards, at the very least, at least you could say if you bought a Nintendo Switch game physically, if you bought a Nintendo Switch and you bought games physically, those games will be there for you. You will be able to play those games because those games, most of them, but you will be able to play those games. You can't say the same with the other consoles.
Yeah, it's... This thing was definitely bad, and yes, it wasn't the end of the world. It was a relatively short period of time. But when you consider the history that Sony in particular has with, yes, it was 2011 was the last time they had a huge outage, but they had 28 days where they had no PlayStation Network. And while hopefully that won't ever happen again, I truly hope that will never happen again. If it does happen, what is that going to do to all these people who are stuck with digital only as their option? They're not going to be able to play any games at all. And they won't have the option of physical. Now, can Sony do some things to change it so that it doesn't cause any major issues? They certainly can. But will they? That's a different story. I was reminded about how it was when Valve first dropped Steam. When they first required you had to have Steam, even for physical copies of Half-Life 2. And the backlash that they got. Because, as one guy told me, he put it, he was mad about having to install that spyware, as he called it. And it's like, that's fair, Valve had to deal with a lot of this stuff early on, with people pushing back and everything else. And over time, Valve got better. And today, that's the reason why they are in the position they're in, is because they had to listen to their customers, and their customers fought back. So, because of that, Valve eventually realized, hey, if we do things that favor the customer, they'll want to give us more business. They'll want to spend their money on our store. They'll want to buy our products, buy our very rare games. They'll want to buy our hardware when we start doing hardware. And, of course, they will sing the praises of this store because we've done things that benefit them as customers. And at the same time, because we're benefiting the customers, because we're doing things that favor them, it also favors us. We get a bunch more money, and that's the reason why Valve is the dominant PC platform today. Now, with the PlayStation side of things, there is some pushback, and hopefully people will keep pushing back, because this digital stuff is probably not going to change in terms of it going all digital. But if their customers will actually take the time to push back and to fight against Sony on these things, it is possible that someday they could end up having a service as good as what Steam has, minus the fact that it probably won't be an open platform. Of course, with the direction that everything's going in terms of the digital future and the likelihood that we could end up just being like, hey, you have to stream everything from here on out. You can't buy the hardware. You have to rent it every month, or, what have you. Or, that if you buy it, it's going to be super expensive. That'll definitely change things potentially compared to, what happened with Valve, where they started very early, and then by the time we get to now 2026, apart from hardware prices that are affected primarily by the RAM crisis, but also just the general state of things right now, they are the dominant platform. They are the platform that people love on PC. Apart from the few people who either are just contrarian for contrarian's sake, or people who have never actually used Steam in many cases. But all that being said, right now it doesn't seem like Microsoft and PlayStation, especially PlayStation, Microsoft too, are really ready for this all-digital future. They do not have things together enough to make sure that it works out well for customers. One of the things that I also was wanting to bring up, the difference in how it works when you buy games on Steam versus on PlayStation or Xbox when you're stuck being offline. When Steam is offline, anything I have downloaded I can play, as long as it doesn't have DRM. Now DRM, obviously that's going to cause issues, but most likely, even if Steam is down, as long as I can still connect to the server for that company to where they can verify the DRM, theoretically it should work, but I'm not sure if it has to connect to Steam, because I think it kind of depends on the software. But there are a lot more games on Steam without that DRM than games with DRM. I mean, even it was recently announced that James Bond, or 007 First Light, which just came out like a month or two ago, already had de novo removed after such a short amount of time. Now, I haven't seen for sure exactly how it's affected performance. I have no doubt that it's made a positive difference, because it always does. But that fact in and of itself means basically, hey, you could probably play this game. You're not dealing with that de novo DRM anymore, which means you probably could play it offline. I know from my own experience, as long as a game doesn't have DRM, doesn't have de novo or what have you, I can boot it up on my Steam Deck even when I have no internet whatsoever. I can boot something up on my laptop without internet whatsoever. I mean, at work, when I'm on my lunch break and I want to play a game, and I have my laptop with me, I can't connect to Steam there at all unless I do a mobile hotspot. But the majority of my games, with the exception of something like Pragmata that actually had de novo, I can just start up the game. I can start it up no problems at all. And I don't have to do anything like setting, oh, this is my primary system, what have you. I can go from device to device to device, even if I'm offline, and I can still play those games simply by logging into Steam. And I don't have to go online to log into Steam. Literally, all I have to do is start it up and select my user, and then I'm in. And it's as simple as that. And so, I mean, I'm sure that there probably would come a point, like if it was any extended period of time, it might require that I actually have to do an online type of login. but I've never dealt with that long of a time period to where it's been an issue. But regardless, I don't have to deal with Nintendo's nonsense on Steam side because I can play any game I have downloaded from system to system without having to worry about being like, oh, you can only use this many systems at a time. It's like, no, I have multiple PCs. I could boot up the same game on my laptop, my desktop, my Steam Deck, my son's Steam Deck, my kid's PC. I could boot up the same game on any one of those, and yes, most of them I can't have two people playing the game at the same time, but I could still boot it up on any one of those platforms, and I don't have to worry about them being like, oh, you can't play on this platform because it's not your primary platform, or because Steam's offline, you can't play this game. It's like, no, that's not an issue. So I think really the only issue is if the account is not logged in at all on that computer. Like, for example, if I were to try and to play a Steam game on my son's account on one of my computers, but his account is not currently logged in any way into my computer, like I removed him from the login options for when I boot up Steam, then I wouldn't be able to play a game on his account, or he wouldn't be able to play a game on his account. But as long as his profile is part on that computer, he can log in. So anyway, that's all I have to say on that.
Yeah, and definitely a great point there at the end. I'm just thinking about it. Yeah, if Sony and Microsoft were able to, I mean, especially Sony were able to just improve their storefronts and prepare for an actual all digital future, then especially if it would benefit, I should preface, if it would benefit us, if it's just something that would benefit them, then obviously no. But if they were able to do what Valve did and actually just improve things, then it would work out very well. But the fact is that they just aren't in that position, and Sony definitely doesn't have the same resources to have that infrastructure set up, especially since they're relying on other people's servers to get things running rather than having their own servers.
Yeah. All right. You want to bring up next topic?
Yeah. I think sort of just to tie into this one. Oops. Let's try that up. Yeah. So just to tie into this. So, obviously, there have been a lot of people talking about, Sony and all digital future, but there's now a boycott being planned by PlayStation gamers called PlayStation Blackout, and this is with the hashtag PS Blackout, and this is going to take place from August 23rd through the 30th. Where, they're just not going to log into PSN, they're not going to buy any digital games, they're not going to turn on their consoles, make any purchases for the entire week. And this is the full statement, the full official statement for this boycott. For several years now, Sony Interactive Entertainment has continued to grow further apart from its fan base, whether it's closing beloved studios like Bluepoint, pursuing a misguided live service strategy, canceling fan events, leaving PSVR 2 to die, or being completely out of touch with the franchises players want to see return. PlayStation has never felt much more disconnected from its community. Ending physical discs in 2028 feels like the last straw. We understand there is only so much SIE can control, but with the decisions that are within its control, the company continues to mismanage the strong position it inherited from the PS4 era. There are so many issues with PlayStation right now that bringing back physical games would only be meeting players halfway. There is still much more SIE can do. We miss Twisted Metal, Socom, Sly Cooper, and Resistance. We miss PlayStation Experience. We miss Japan Studio. With that, we are calling on PlayStation players to participate in an economic and gameplay blackout from Sunday, August 23rd at 7 p.m. local time through Sunday, August 30th at 7 p.m. local time. Players can participate by turning off their consoles or logging off for 7 days. We feel that this period gives publishers and developers minimal impact while still giving players a voice. So yeah, next month at the end of August, they are going to be completely boycotting it. I guess one key thing to say here is that, this has been purposely, and this has been mentioned to me purposely, stated to be taking place during a time where it wouldn't impact any publishers or developers, and that is key. And that is going to be a major point that I am going to bring up. But before I get to that, though, what are your thoughts on this whole boycotts blackout situation?
Well, I'm going to say, first of all, I don't think this is going to do anything. I respect the desire for people to do it, and I think that people who feel like this is what they need to do, they should do it. But I also recognize that, especially with them saying that there's an actual specific end date, you're basically just telling Sony, hey, I'm gonna leave for a little bit, but I'll be back. I'll be back in a week, and so they're not gonna care. They just won't. The other thing is that I feel like this is just not enough to actually get through to Sony. Because not only are you setting an end date, which I think it would have been a heck of a lot more effective if they just said starting this date and they didn't say, 1 week later we're coming back. I think that could be a whole lot more effective. But even then, it has to be very widely done by the PlayStation players in order for it to be truly effective. The simple fact that they've set a 7-day time period, Sony's just going to be like, oh, there's a little blip here, no big deal. We already know that they're going to come crawling back in 7 days. And then they're probably going to go crazy. The other thing is that they're doing it in a time where there's not really anything releasing. I think the only thing that might be releasing during that time might be the Metal Gear Solid collection, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, I'm sure there's probably something else, but I think that's like one of the few big releases during that time. And while I understand the point of not wanting to impact developers from that standpoint, it also just says a lot that you're not willing to do it during a time when it would actually send a message. Ideally, and I know this will never happen, but I think the ideal time to send that message, if you really wanted to do a boycott, even if it was only a short-term boycott, would be during the week that Wolverine releases. But that's not going to happen, because they're still going to come back. They're still going to buy Wolverine. Someone theorized, and I could see Sony doing this, that the day that the boycott is supposed to start, they will open up pre-orders for God of War Laufey. And so then all of these people that are wanting to boycott will go and pre-order and completely prove that they didn't really care all that much. So I could certainly see that happening, just knowing what kind of company Sony has been. But ultimately, the big issue is, if you set an end date on this, all that does is it tells Sony that you're not really serious about it. I mean, the best thing you could do for yourself, realistically, would be just to abandon Sony completely. But I know that's not simple to do. That's actually very difficult to do, especially if PlayStation is your only platform. And realistically, like, the way I look at these, I personally think the best thing that someone could do if they want to transition away from a particular platform, it is to start buying their some of their games on a different platform. like PC, for example. If they want to make a transition to PC, start buying games on PC. Start transitioning away from buying the third-party games. Instead of buying them on PlayStation, buy them on PC and then just do the first party for now. Because that could also be sending a message. But the biggest problem of all with this is that there has to be mass adoption for it to really impact them. And there's just not going to be mass adoption, especially because you have so many people who are just, for lack of a better phrasing, the ball and gun gamers, that they're going to be playing Fortnite, Call of Duty, etc., 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 and they're just going to be playing their, there's things where they just don't care about all this other stuff. They're unaffected by it. They're not going to participate in this boycott because they have their set thing. They're not really all that upset about the digital thing in many cases. It just doesn't matter that much to them. And some of them might not even know what's happening, potentially. I mean, I would imagine probably it's pretty widespread knowledge at this point, but it may also just be the fact that I'm online a lot and, I'm around. The people that I talk to are all gamers, but it's one of those where it's like I respect the choice to do it, and I think people who really are willing to do it should do it. I'm just not convinced it's going to do anything to Sony. I don't think that they're going to actually listen based on this when they know that people are just coming back a week later. The only way to do this in any way, shape, or form that will actually be effective, not even counting the fact, I'm not even counting needing to have mass adoption, is you have to do it without an end date. You have to do it until Sony bends. And they're not going to bend the knee if you say 7 days later we're back. Especially when you do it when there's no big releases that people care enough about for it to actually be an effective boycott. Now, what will be even more effective is if people canceled their pre-orders for GTA 6 and didn't play at all the week that it came out. That also will never happen. In fact, that'll happen even less than the Wolverine thing will happen, because the Wolverine one, although it will certainly have appeal, GTA 6 has way more appeal and is going to sell way more copies. Without question. It already has sold way more copies. So, that's essentially my 250. My 2 cents.
Yeah, I agree that the idea sounds good, but the execution is poor. Like you said, having a set date or just like a set end date and just saying, oh, it's just a week, that is nothing in the grand scheme of things.
Especially when you tell Sony that you're doing it.
Yes, especially if you tell them that. That gives them time to prepare, especially for telling their investors and say, like, hey, we had not even like a down quarter. We had a down week, okay, yeah, during the third quarter. And so other than that, though, profits were pretty much because of the success of Wolverine. So that 1 week is not going to do anything. And like you said, it's during a week where nothing too eventful is occurring. Mm-hmm. And, whether or not this would hurt the developers or publishers, they should have done it during Wolverine's launch week if you really want to send a message. And I would say a better thing to have said would be starting from August 23rd, we will be doing blackouts, and we will be doubling down on every Sony first party release. Like, not having it to end date, but saying we will be strongly emphasizing that this will especially happen during your launches. So, Wolverine, God of War. So that way Sony knows whenever they put out their own games, they're going to specifically be targeted during those launch periods. So by just having some random off the beaten path week, that's not going to do anything at all. And like you said, they're going to be coming back to Sony anyway. They're going to be playing the games. They're going to be buying the games. It's not going to send a message at all. And it's, even though there is an idea of an organized boycott, it's not organized in the sense that, okay, we're not thinking about the long term. I mean, look at Helldivers 2. And that wasn't even organized at all. But when Sony required the the PlayStation accounts requirements, people just review bombed that game, and they forced Sony to backpedal and just like, all right, we hear you, we'll remove the requirements. Okay. And it's just like, and I mean, they even added in a cape with the design of the review bomb charts, just because that was how big of an impact that was made. So, if you really just, if the PlayStation players were able to just have that type of mentality where we will not tolerate this at all, and we will go as long as it takes, they could get results done.
Yeah.
And like you said, they could send a bigger message if they did not buy GTA 6. If they had pre-ordered the game, which, that's pre-ordering a digital game on that in and of itself defeats the whole purpose right now, I would say. But if you went ahead and bought the game, there's no reason to be doing this boycott in the first place, because you've already handed them the golden keys right there. Okay. So it's ridiculous. So yeah, this isn't gonna work. I understand the idea behind it, but the execution is very flawed. Like I said, should have just had it. It would have been better if they had at least started during Wolverine's launch and then just continued on out. And even better, say we're gonna even do it on the release week of GTA 6. Doing that with, I mean, granted, you still have had the sales from Xbox, and Xbox gamers wouldn't have been participating in this anyway. But at least there would have been something going on there. This is just going to be a footnote for Sony, and they're not going to really make it. They're not going to take too much of a notice from this at all. And yeah, they could have been doing so much better than this. But I mean, like I said, I appreciate the sentiment behind it, but you need to actually go. You need to push harder than you are doing now.
You have to have some kind of sacrifice on your end. If you're just doing it on a week when it's like an off week and all that, that's not a sacrifice. Sony's not going to take notice of that.
Right.
You're making it too easy for them.
Right. And I mean, and I'll this isn't necessarily going to be the same thing, but it's kind of how, even though what I'm doing isn't going to make a difference, it's sort of like how I do not buy games that would have any type of extra launcher on them. So like games that would come from Rockstar or games that would come from Ubisoft or EA, just because I do not want to have Origin, Uplay, or whatever Rockstar's launcher is, because I do not want to have an extra launcher going on right now. There are games I would like to play, like the Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. I would like to play some of the other Assassin's Creed games on PC, because I did play them originally on like the Wii U and stuff. But it's just like, I do not want to have to deal with another launcher outside of this. So I'm just like, I just won't buy the games. So like, you have to have that resolve to where you say, hey, I would like to play this game, but I just do not want to support this practice. And so even if I can't do anything about it, I will not contribute to what's going on. So you just need to stick with your conviction, essentially.
Yeah, in the end, it's just like, I look at the relationship that most people on PlayStation have with the company, and it's Stockholm Syndrome at this point. I mean, yes, of course, in the past, they released some great games. They had a great platform. There's a lot of things they did right in the past, but the problem is that this generation in particular has shown them do things again and again and again that are completely against their customers, against the people who support them and who are loyal to them. And the more they do these things, the people who are like heavily invested in the system and who just love it as their platform, they are, even when they see the things that are bad and they acknowledge that those things are bad, they will not leave because they've invested too much in this. They think that, oh, they can change, and maybe they can, maybe. But there comes a certain point when you have to leave an abusive relationship. And it's not always easy, but sometimes it's the best thing for you. I mean, I can't pretend that, like, I fully understand what they're going through in terms of that. You know, it took me a while to leave behind PlayStation the way I did. Because, I mean, I've had PlayStation since 2000. Yeah, since the year 2000. You know, when I got a PS1. And I still have my original PS1, my PS2, my PS3, my PS4, my PSP, and my Vita. And there are a lot of things that I really love about those platforms. I have a lot of great memories attached to them, all that. Introduced me to some great franchises, that sort of thing. But then it finally just got to a point where I reached a breaking point with PlayStation when I almost got a PS5. And then I found out that the one game that I was like, okay, I'll play this from my backlog, my PS4 game. You know, I wanted to play Persona 5 Royal. I was going to play it on PS5 if I got the PS5. But it was still stuck at 30 FPS. And it's like, really? I mean, you have all this extra power and you're still stuck at 30 FPS because the game hasn't been updated. And like, someone might say, well, that's Atlus's fault. But it's like, no, because I've gotten used to the nice thing on PC where if you get better hardware, your game looks and runs better. Period. Point blank. End of story. There's very few exceptions. It's basically only like the really old games that don't always do that. And even a lot of those, you can still do them at 1440p or even 1080p. You know, you can still get a game that looks and runs well without those limits. But when it comes to these Sony games, that's not the case at all. And it's not just Sony. I mean, it's Nintendo as well, Xbox in general. Although I think Xbox, at least some of their games do improve that. But it just, I finally got to a point where it's like, that's the last straw. I can't deal with this anymore. I had already backed off of having PlayStation Plus for a while because I got tired of having to pay for cloud saves because I didn't care about the quote-unquote free games because most of them didn't appeal to me. If I wanted to play the game, I would just buy it. But yeah. And I want to be clear, like, I'm not trying to criticize people who have this relationship with Sony that they've, you know, that it's their favorite platform to play games on, that they have all these games on there, and it's not easy to just leave it behind. Like, I get that. I really do understand that. And I don't want it to seem like I'm criticizing those people, but I also want them to be able to get out of that abusive relationship because right now what Sony's doing is not good. And I think that while there is technically room for them to improve, I don't think it's a good idea to just stay in the relationship. I mean, this isn't like a marriage, which, you know, that's a whole different story. I mean, obviously, because a marriage is a whole lot better. Though, of course, depending on the situation with a marriage, it might be even more important to leave that kind of situation. But the point I'm trying to make here is that these things are not beneficial to you. And when you are a customer of a company, this is not a marriage. This is a customer vendor relationship. When that vendor is now doing things that actively are screwing you, you need to stop giving them your money. That's the only way that your things are ever going to get better, is to take your money away from them. And yes, you on your own may not have all that much of an impact on them in the grand scheme of things, but you can at least have some dignity from that standpoint. And I know it's not easy, and I know people don't want to switch to PC. Like, I do understand that, but it's one of those situations where I feel like they could just do so much more for themselves by at least backing away. Even if they're not, like, fully withdrawing all of their support. Say, okay, you know, I'll continue to buy the first-party games, but maybe I'll buy a third-party game here and there on a different platform. Start moving away from the platform and ease yourself off of it until you get to a point where you feel like, I no longer have a need for this platform. Or, you know, I'll buy like a game or two here or there, but I don't need to buy a PlayStation 6 because I don't buy any of the games there anymore. I like playing it on this other platform. But for some people, that's heresy, especially when it comes to, you know, like, they don't want to go to Xbox because Xbox is the devil, and, you know, Phil Spencer is the devil 2.0 or something. I don't know. But, yeah, or no, Game Pass is the devil's master. That's the problem. So, yes, Xbox is the devil, and Game Pass is the... I don't know. Anyway, the analogy's breaking down. I'm tired. It's late. So, yeah, let's just move on. All right. Let's get into our recommendations and dissuasions. So, why don't you start us off?
All right. So, my recommendation is going to be salmon furikake, or salmon rice seasoning. This is something that I initially tried when I first went to Japan. Had it for the breakfast, I guess, buffet that they had set up there, and I was like, oh, that's pretty interesting. I'll try it. I'll put some on my rice. And so I tasted it, and I realized this is incredible stuff. And I didn't know what it was at the time. I just knew it was like the little display said salmon seasoning or something like that. Okay. And so I was like, wow, this is pretty good. And when I came back, I was really trying to figure out, all right, what was that stuff I had? You know, I knew it was salmon something for rice, but I couldn't figure out what it was. And it took me several years, but then I saw something in a store which said salmon furikake, and I looked up online. I was like, that sounds familiar. Is that what it looked like? And then when I saw it, I said, this is it. This is the stuff I had. And so I bought some, and I've been buying some every time I wanted to make some type of sort of or any type of rice bowl dish. I've had some just to season it. It's good. There are several different flavors, like there's the nori one you can get, and like there's one other one, but the salmon one for me is the best, and I've really enjoyed it. So, you know, if you look up salmon furikake or salmon rice seasoning, you should be able to find it pretty easily enough. But yeah, that is my recommendation.
All right, might have to look into that. Sounds interesting. All right, my recommendations. First of all, with Salt and Sacrifice, if you are struggling with a boss, definitely vary your weapon choices. In fact, I recommend just doing that in general, but especially if you're struggling with a boss or with a group of enemies, that sort of thing. Sometimes just having a different type of weapon or having a different element for your weapon can be very helpful, especially if you're struggling with enemies or a boss. Secondly, I have to recommend Wickles Pickles because they are delicious, sweet and spicy, and I'm not a fan of sweet pickles, but these ones are super good. So I definitely have to recommend those. All right, dissuasions.
My dissuasion is going to be if you, or rather, do not have. If you have this set, whether it's called night light mode or blue screen filter, if you have that set up on your phone for whatever reason, especially if you are, you know, don't want to strain your eyes in the evening or later periods of the night, do not have that on as a permanent setting. At the very least, have it set on a timer where it's set up to go into that mode during the evening/night, because apparently having that on for an extended period of time can degrade your screen, and that is possibly what happened with my phone since I had that on all the time. So definitely do not keep that on based on what I've seen online from what people have said. So yeah, put it on a timer, or just don't use it often, but just do not keep it on altogether. That is my dissuasion.
All right. Okay, well, my dissuasions, first of all, do not participate in the PlayStation blackout unless you just really feel like this is your way of communicating to Sony, or if you're willing to go more than that 7 days. But and on a less serious note, if you have a PlayStation, or I'm sorry, if you have a PC or Xbox and have never played Halo, do not buy Halo Campaign Evolved, but instead just get the Master Chief Collection, because the Master Chief Collection comes with 6 games. You get the best experience for Halo, because you can play it either with the anniversary visuals, or you can toggle it over to the original visuals. You get the original experience otherwise. It's a fantastic game. And you also get 2, 3 ODST. I know that there's another one. 4
in Reach.
Yeah, and Reach. Yeah, so you get 6 Halo games. A lot of times you can get it on discount. I think I've seen it as low as like $15. It's a way better deal. You get multiplayer included instead of paying $70, and it's not essentially a travesty version of the game. Sure, it doesn't look as good as Campaign Evolved does, but Campaign Evolved has a lot of things that make it much lesser than the original games. And you'll have a much better experience playing the original, plus you get a whole lot more games rather than having to do otherwise. On the PlayStation side, like if you're only on PlayStation and you don't have the option of playing the Master Chief Collection at all, or you just don't want to get a filthy Xbox or PC, then I would say just skip Campaign Evolved altogether. It's not worth it. From everything I've been seeing, this does not look like it's going to be worth your time. And if you really want to experience what Halo is when it's actually good, Campaign Evolved is not it. That's what I got. All right, where can people find you?
They can find me on my channel. I am Xeracon. That's IAMXERACON. So youtube.com/@IamXeracon. No new content as of right now, but Lord willing, this weekend I'm going to try to actually start up my ABC's series at last. I already know what game I want to play, so it's just a matter of getting the recording set up on that end. And then on my other channel, I have Justin's Bible Blog. That's at Justin's Bible Blog. And for some reason, I still just cannot be satisfied with my videos, so I'm putting that on a temporary hold, and on the other end, I'm also have another video that isn't going to be as strenuous, or at least it isn't going to be bothering me so much. So I am working on the script for that, and then I should also have that video ready to go definitely much sooner than the ABC video, so that should be out this week. But that is everything I have right now.
Nice. All right. Well, you can find me on my YouTube gaming channel at TheFrozenGamer87. The only thing that's been put out recently, which was put out last week, is my downsides of PC gaming video, as I had promised for a long time. It is pretty lengthy, but only about half as long as the Why I Love PC Gaming video. And really, I spend more time talking about why those downsides are not as big of an issue as they seem to be. So, if you're afraid that it's going to be me ragging on PC It's not, but it is being completely honest about what the actual downsides are of gaming on PC. So, worth checking out, in my opinion. Put a lot of work into it, and I think that it came out well. So be sure to check that out. You can also find both of us on the YouTube and Rumble channel for the podcast, which is on YouTube at the Orange Box Podcast, and on Rumble it's not a custom URL, but you can still find us there. The video version of the podcast goes live every Friday at 7 a.m. Central Time, barring technical issues, and the audio-only version goes live on all major audio podcast platforms, including Apple Podcasts, YouTube Music, Spotify, Deezer, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, and others at 12 a.m. Central Time every Friday, barring technical issues. If you'd like to contact us, you can send an email to the orangeboxpodcast@gmail.com, or you can comment on the video version of the podcast, and we'll be sure to read your comment on the show. And that is everything. All right, last chance. Any final thoughts?
No, sir.
All right, well, I am the Frozen Gamer 87. That is I am Zeracon. We are the Orange Box Podcast. And until next time, don't play Halo Campaign Evolved, or you too will be unimpressed with Master Chief. Orange Box Podcast, out.